Holy Halloween, Batman! Here's your spooky spot on the brand new McFarlane Toys Batman 66 series Lord Deathman. Lord Deathman was a mysterious crime boss who could return from the dead. In one gruesome incident, he came back to life mid-autopsy. Lord Deathman also had superhuman strength and stamina, which he used to battle Batman, the Outsiders, and Talon. Ra's al Ghul even sought to siphon the regenerative fluids from Lord Deathman's body. You'd have to believe that the Reaper would have one hard time trying to make an appointment with this guy. Before we get a closer look at the brand new Batman 66 series Lord Deathman, let me thank the folks first over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample we could have a look at. While though not appearing in the original 60s TV series, Lord Deathman though did appear in the Batman 66 comic run, first debuting in issue 21 from May 2015. As for the figure's height, Lord Deathman stands almost 6 inches. He's actually about 5 3/4 of an inch in height, or he's about 14 centimeters tall. Of course, we're going to have to bring in some figures now for comparison. So here's what Lord Deathman looks like with Batman. And I can't help but notice, while the bodies are about the same, Lord Deathman's head might be a tad bit too big for the rest of the proportions of his body. He certainly looks, though, a lot bigger when you compare him along with the Adam West Batman. Other figures we can also bring in from this wave. Here's the earlier looked at Batman, a robot Batman. Here's also what the figure looks like with the Superman figure. And we also had a look at Joker Man. A good cast of characters this time around for the current wave that we've gotten from McFarlane's team. While not being packaged with any action bubbles, no, Lord Deathman still managed to get himself a sword. The sword is fairly soft plastic. You can see by the way I'm bending the blade back and forth. It's been painted well, I feel, in a dark silver for the blade, and both the guard and the hilt have been molded in just the black plastic. It fits in his hand, although it only fits in this side. The other hand is just a closed shut fist. It's not that hard, in fact, to actually take the sword with the hilt and slide it in between his fingers and his thumb. And of course, that's one way of displaying the figure. And with the posability still in place when it comes to his elbow articulation, you can at least rotate the arm back and forth. Same can unfortunately be said for the legs. The legs are still going to be one of the more limited things about these figures, but at least you can turn the arm around if you want to have like a little bit more of an action pose for the character. Lord Deathman's abilities, by the way, is through meditation, he can appear to die slowing by just simply slowing down his heart. It's a rather interesting sort of supernatural take on a normal character, a normal criminal that would kind of inhabit the world of Gotham City. I figured one of the reasons why we were going to look at this as a spooky spot is because the most supernatural of villains, I would imagine, would be Lord Deathman. Again, you usually get the likes of King Tut's or the Riddler or Catwoman. You don't tend to get a character that's dressed like a skeleton with a big skeletal head. Speaking of his head, though, let's go ahead and just remove the sword for right now. Getting a closer look, though, at Lord Deathman's head. Other than perhaps maybe his head being a little bit too big, I do think they've sculpted it really nicely. Now, there is also a glow-in-the-dark version of Lord Deathman that we will be looking at in an upcoming review, but I did want to start things going back to basics, at least, with more of the traditional color scheme of this character. The white looks really good on him, and, well, I could also say as well, like the black color that they've done for the eyes, the nose, nasal cavities, and what little he has for lines around his lips has all been painted really, really well. And obviously, it's a hard line to tread when it comes to characters from Batman 66 universe, because you don't want to make them super detailed. There's sort of more of a refined, stylized design to Lord Deathman's head sculpt. I think works really well, even though it does stand a little bit out when you compare it with the other likes of, say, Joker, and again, Penguin, and all those other colleagues and cronies that Batman would be battling. Now, he does also have a cape. The cape can be removable. The cape itself is very similar to what we would have gotten with, like, the Superpowers line, for example. The clip, while making use of kind of a C-shaped plastic, be careful that you're not going to be bending it too much because that could potentially snap. But the material that they used is very similar to what we would have gotten with, like, really any of the Batman figures. So, like, just to bring back in Adam West Batman, for example, you can see, like, the material that they used is very similar. Obviously, though, with Lord Deathman, it's black instead of blue. It clips, though, in the same place, just around his neck. And it fits fairly well, too. With the benefit of this guy also having a slightly longer neck, it doesn't feel that even when you're clipping the neck piece in place. Like when we had a look, for example, at Joker Man, The problem with Joker Man's cape was that the neck wasn't very long in the first place, so it made things a little harder when it came to rotating his head around because it always felt like it was too close in quarters. With the higher collar here for Lord Deathman, it actually still manages to move the head easily back and forth where I don't feel like the cape is necessarily getting in the way of things. As for the rest of the figure's body, while mostly being black, molded in black plastic, you can see that only really the front half of it gets painted. All the back and behind of the figure is all just the molded black plastic. It's really only just the front that gets the most detail. All the bones, for example, have been painted in the forearm, the higher area of his arm, the rib cage, and down below in the legs as well. There's a little bit of blue that gets broken up there as well, so you can get blue gloves, for example, and a blue, not utility belt necessarily, but just a basic blue belt. Now, I think they probably would have used these torso pieces before. I'm just looking at Batman, for example, and you can see that while maybe the utility belt is completely different, this obviously would have been already a piece that was over top of his body. So if, for example, this was just removed, I would imagine underneath that is just a basic lower half of his body. And it looks to be the case while comparing the two. Maybe not necessarily the boots, but maybe like the knees up to the area of his waist are all carried over from Batman now to Lord Deathman. So while they have used some of the mold elements here, and even like looking at the torso, it looks like they probably would have used maybe Batman's arms, well, maybe not his forearms, because they obviously would have had to sculpt brand new gloves, but at least as well the chest piece looks to be all the same. I do again like the coloring of this guy, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the glow in the dark, which essentially is just basically replacing all the white on the figure with a very bright neon green. Definitely looking forward to looking at that figure. But all in all, it's a really interesting, very obscure looking design character. Really, again, when you consider all the other characters that inhabit the world of Gotham City, Lord Deathman does stand out a little bit, but I kind of like the look of him as him being really very different from normal design characters. For the articulation on the figure, now he does have a head articulation via a ball joint. It does, though, with the neck piece in place for his cape, still manages to rotate all the way around. You can have the head looking up, you can have the head looking down, and you can rock it back and forth as well. The figure also has a waist swivel, so that's good to see. And the figure also has hinges on his arms. So basically, if you already have your Adam West Batman in your collection space, this guy basically is using all the same articulation points. His arms go beyond the point of 90 degrees. You can take those arms and rotate them, sure, all the way around. The problem, though, with the shoulders is, you can see, like the way that they make them is sort of more like a triangular shape. So the shoulders jet out a little bit more. So rotating the arms all the way around, there's definitely a lot more resistance happening here at the top of it. He still manages, though, to have a hinge in his elbow that allows at least the forearm to rotate back and forth, and the hands as well rotate all the way around. Legs don't necessarily split because that's the point that's a little bit more limited on these figures, but he still manages to have a swivel where the legs can go forward and back. Lord Deathman also has a single hinge only in his knee, but at least it allows the lower leg to rotate. And he doesn't have any articulation in the feet, because again, when that figure body mold was used before with the Adam West Batman, they would have just added the boot over top of it. Still, though, to bring back in the original Batman, well, still, the more I look at it, the more I realize that it looks like they're using really a lot of the same body pieces as the earlier looked at West Batman. But all in all, again, it's a really interesting looking character. I mean, if I was to close my eyes and kind of consider what a Batman villain would be from the 60s series, I certainly would not have come up with someone like Lord Deathman. He definitely does break the mold a little bit. And while somewhat ironic to say that, because again, he's just using the mold really from the initial Batman, he definitely does things differently in a nice way as well. While we may not have gotten ourselves a Scarecrow in the original 60s Batman series, which is, I really think, of all the villains that never appeared in the Batman Adam West series, I think Scarecrow really was the most missed opportunity. Scarecrow was already well established in the comics, first debuting in 1941, so well 20 years before even the 60s series even started. I think you could have had some real fun with Adam West Batman and Burt Ward Robin even battling the Scarecrow in like a cemetery lair, even doing it during Halloween. But no, they never did, for one reason or another. So at least we have a scary stand-in here with Lord Deathman. And like Scarecrow, never appeared in the original 60s series. He did, though, appear in the Batman 66 series comics. So at least he's based on that. Which is, in fact, actually all of the figures that we've looked at from this wave so far have all had one thing in common. Not interesting-looking outfits. I know that would have been the one thing you would have said, but also the fact that all of them have appeared only in the comics, never appearing in the original 60s series. As it comes to the design of Lord Deathman, I really like the skull motif. It really does, though, stand out like a bit of a sore thumb, because while you think of Batman villains, you sort of think camp. I don't think there's really a lot of campiness happening here with Lord Deathman. He's all basically using the same body as the Adam West body from before, obviously, so they had to deliver a little bit more when it comes to the paint. And while not having any paint, unfortunately, on the back of the figure's body, he has this really cool skeleton detailing added not only in his arms, his legs, and his torso, but then he has this bright skull too. Unfortunately, though, the skull is a lot brighter than all the bones that they painted on his body. But again, I like the consistent look of the figure. And, you know, speaking of consistent, once again, this figure comes included with a cloth cape, which has been, again, a consistent thing that we've seen with all of the 60s Batman figures so far. And he also comes included with a sword, which, like the name, Lord Deathman, does stand out a bit strangely that the figure would be having a sword. I think that he would just have like an over-the-top giant skull blaster or something along those lines. But apparently, no, he's got a sword. Batman's got a little bit more to worry about, above and beyond the fact that he's going to have to battle a guy that looks like a skeleton. Oh, and also, yeah, he can stop his heart rate. What a dark character with Lord Deathman. But what do you guys think of the character? Let me know down below in the comments section. I think really of all the figures that we've looked at so far from this wave, my favorites have really been Joker Man and Lord Deathman. And speaking of Lord Deathman, as mentioned in this review, we will also be looking at the glow-in-the-dark version of this, which basically is the figure that we're looking at right now, but kind of in your brain, swap the white out for a glow-in-the-dark green. Yeah, we're going to be looking at him in an upcoming review. Of course, though, I wanted to thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys. A big thank you for providing the Lord Deathman figure that we could have a look at during the Spottober year, Spottober season at least. And I think while maybe not all the rest of the characters would fall into the territory of spooky spots, I would certainly say Lord Deathman definitely does check enough of those boxes. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, I want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content and you're on board to see the rest of the remaining of the 66 series, the only figure that we still have yet to look at is the glow-in-the-dark Lord Deathman, which could very well also be a spooky spot. So make sure, yeah, you're keeping your ghoulish peepers peeled to this channel by hitting that subscribe button down below, by turning on the bell notification. But of course, the most important, that you're coming back regularly. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.